Now, Hungary says its move is not an attack on individual self-expression, but a clarification that legal norms are based on biological reality. The Hungarian Civil Liberties Union says it sends a clear message for transgender and intersex people and is purely and strictly about humiliating people and excluding them, not just from the national community, but even from the community of human beings. Now, that after Hungary easily approved constitutional changes targeting LGBTQ plus people, for example, by allowing the government to ban public events by their communities. Well, Doug Herbert, our international affairs commentator, is joining me now here on set. Doug, Viktor Orban, he's been amending Hungary's constitution almost from the moment he came to power, more than a decade ago. It's the 15th time, isn't it, that they've changed this document that they wrote and they approved themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of a continuum, as you say, Stuart. This is a continuum, a march towards what Viktor Orban himself has described as illiberal, I guess, versus a liberal democracy. A crackdown, as Europe sees it, on fundamental rights and freedoms, making Hungary once again an outlier in the EU club of 27 nations. Look, Orban signaled that this was coming. Back in mid-March, he promised, quote, an Easter cleanup against opponents that he labeled stink bugs. Stink bugs, if I could get that out of my mouth. What are these amendments? It's not just one, it's not just two, it's a series of amendments. At the center of it is exactly what you just described. Basically a mandate that there are two genders only, male and female, non-binary. And it is couched in language that this is all about the welfare of minors, of children. What do they say? They say that we are enshrining the protection of children's mental and physical and moral development. So this is about don't expose them to anything, to gay people, to homosexuals, anything that might taint children's spiritual and moral development. So it's that, but it also codifies, it reinforces a law actually passed last month, back in March, which banned these public events of LGBTQ plus groups. And also it brings into being allows the use of tools, of digital tools to identify people in crowds participating in these events. So there's the fear, intimidation, and stigma attached to mere participation, anyone who dares to defy it. Beyond that, and here's what we weren't talking about, these amendments also call for the temporary suspension for a maximum of 10 years of the Hungarian citizenship of dual nationals who are from non-EU states. Sounds complicated, but what it basically boils down to, if you're a Hungarian-American citizen, even Hungarian by birth, you risk having your Hungarian citizenship stripped from you if your presence in Hungary is deemed to be a threat to Hungary's sovereignty or its security. A lot of people say this is aimed at people like George Soros, the philanthropist, Hungarian-American, who has advocated for democracy and has advocated, namely, against the type of government we see with Viktor Orban. All of it spells a continued crackdown, like I said, that march towards a more authoritarian drift, a more illiberal bent, and anti-woke movement across Hungarian society. And I will just note for you, Stuart, it's no coincidence, perhaps, at least critics say, that it comes as Hungary's economy is struggling, as Viktor Orban faces parliamentary elections next year, in which there is a new opposition leader, party, Peter Magyar, former member of Orban's party, who is posing potentially a real threat and shown in some polls as actually leading nationally. So times like that, this is the type of thing, it's throwing some red meat to your conservative base.
I mean, the changes are rooted, aren't they, in traditional family values. Echo similar restrictions from Vladimir Putin, of course, in Russia. But Donald Trump's also providing a bit of rocket fuel, isn't he, to Orban?
Yeah. Donald Trump started out his second term back in January by signing an executive order stating that the U.S., the United States, would only recognize two genders, male and female. So it does sound familiar, and it is rocket fuel. Donald Trump has clearly been inspired by Viktor Orban. Remember, Orban's been around since 2010. Donald Trump, on the presidential scene at least, only since 2017. So if anyone's being inspired by anyone else, it's Trump taking a cue from Orban. But you are right in suggesting, Stuart, that Orban has been empowered, emboldened by Trump 2.0, who has been stamping out these, DEI programs, inclusion and equity and diversity programs across the United States. There's even right now taking aim in the U.S. at LGBTQ plus rights, because that movement itself is also in jeopardy. Perhaps not in every state, but take Texas, for example. A new bill in Texas proposes charging people with gender identity fraud. Those are the words, gender identity fraud, if they present themselves to a government entity or a government employer as anything other than the gender assigned to them at birth, their biological gender at birth. So basically, you're stamping out the notion that you can choose your own sexual identity, that you can choose who you want to be, who you are, speak for yourself. This is all echoing very much what's happening in Hungary right now. And in Europe, there's also those concerns.
Yeah. I mean, Hungary is a EU member.
Yeah.
Often clashes with other members of the bloc, it must be said, of course. So how is Europe reacting, and how might it react?
Yeah, well, already this has been an ongoing theme, right? Hungary, it almost seems like in the same breath, whenever we bring up Hungary, Stuart, we're talking about, and Europe, talking about Europe in some way denouncing what it sees as Orban's fundamental crackdown on dissent, on civil society, on freedoms, on media organizations, journalists, the rule of law, the courts, so on and so on. And now it's also sexual identity. The EU, back in 2021, the EU Commission already took Budapest to court over a law that would banning the promotion of homosexuality. I noted it down because that's the exact wording. A law in Hungary that banned promoting homosexuality. Once again, very similar to the laws in Vladimir Putin's family values Russia right now. We know there that LGBTQ plus movement was banned in Russia, labeled an extremist organization. So very much right now, the EU in general denouncing what they see as Hungary's crackdown against fundamental freedoms, at odds, clashing with the European Union's core values. And at the same time, they have also frozen billions of euros in funding for Hungary based on these very complaints, saying that Hungary is not abiding by the core principles of the Union of which it is a member. So these are all ongoing issues. European Union has objected time and again. There's some critical court cases coming up in the next month or so that could test whether or not Europe can put some real muscle behind its condemnation and its words. And what happens if Hungary continues to go down this path and flout what the EU sees as its core values.
Doug, thanks so much. Doug Herbert, International Affairs commentator on France 24.